إلهنا ما أعدلك مليك كل من ملك لبيك قد لبيت لك لبيك إن الحمد لك إلهنا ما أعدلك مليك كل.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome everyone to our session today entitled Navigating the KSA, Navigating the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is an important topic for us to talk about because this might be the first time many of us are actually traveling to the kingdom. And as you know, whenever you travel, there are many different cultural differences and otherwise regarding different things that you're going to see from what we have here in the States. So, without further ado, I want to kind of go into some of those differences, inshallah. So firstly, we talk about something like cultural differences, and I touched a little bit on this yesterday when I was talking to some of the caregivers, those who have family members with disabilities and things like that. But these cultural differences have a wide scope, and we're going to see things done differently from how they are here in the States. So it's good to be aware of that so that we can be prepared, and so that we're not caught off guard, or have like a cultural shock when we go, inshallah. So when we talk about cultural differences, I think one of the most pertinent and the most salient is when you get there on the ground, you'll notice a change in language, right? So unlike here in the States, English is not the primary language in Saudi Arabia. In fact, Arabic is. And so most of the time you're going to see signposts, announcements, things like that are being done in Arabic. Most of the people there speak Arabic primarily. However, their English is secondary. So, for example, at the airport, you will see that the signposts that have Arabic on them also have English on them as well, the translation. And a lot of the time, people in the service industry, in the hotels, at the airport, they do speak English as well, but it's their secondary language. So you have to bear with them and just of course, be very aware and mindful of the fact that not everyone is going to speak English. So, for example, when you're in the haram, it's more than possible that if you have to speak to a guard or speak to one of the workers in the haram, that they may not actually speak English as their first language. They may speak Arabic as their first language, or perhaps if it's someone from the service industry, they actually have a different first language other than English. So you can just be prepared for that. If you wanted to, I think it's also helpful to have like a translation app if you're not primarily an Arabic speaker. So you could download an app like Google Translate, or something of the sort. So that way, if you needed to get a really important message across to somebody who doesn't speak English or doesn't understand what you're saying, as well, you could actually go ahead and use that app where you are able to input the text of what you want to say into the app, and then you can play it for them and so that they can understand. And then they can actually respond to you as well using the same app by again inputting the text of the Arabic that they want to say to you or what they want to say to you in Arabic, and then the phone will translate it over for you into English. So just being really mindful of the fact that not everyone is going to be able to speak the same languages as us, and that's okay. There are ways around it. But for the most part, in the airport and hotels and things like that, you'll always have English speakers, and of course, our staff is all, and our team, inshallah, is all primarily English speakers, alhamdulillah. So you can always discuss things with us or converse with us if you need something and you're not able to get it through someone else. The next thing is times. So unlike here in the States, time in Saudi Arabia moves a little bit differently. So what I mean by that is not that they have a different 24 hours or they have, they don't have 24 hours in their day. They have the same 24 hours in their day over there that we do over here. But what I mean by when I say time moves differently or time is measured differently, I should say, is that many things are usually revolve around the salah timings, right? So they will often say things like after Salat al-Asr, we will do XYZ, or before Salat al-Maghrib, we will do XYZ, right? And so one of the reasons I'm here today and Sister Noor isn't able to be here today is because she had a meeting after Salat al-Isha. Over there, it's Isha time. And because of the after Salat al-Isha, it could mean 5 minutes after Isha, it can mean half an hour after Isha. It's a little bit flexible because again, it is with the timings of the salat. So it depends on how long it takes to do the prayer. And then they go about the next thing or the next item on the agenda. So because of that, things are not the same way they are to the T or to the minute here, right? Like if we said we're going to start at 12, we usually give 5 minutes. At 12:05, we started our webinar, right? Over there, things, again, they're more free flowing, more flexible, and they do revolve around the timings of the salawat. And again, they're approximate timings. So they'll say, okay, approximately in half an hour, but that half an hour could be 30 minutes, it could be 35 minutes, it could be closer to 40 minutes, right? So these are approximate timings. And one thing I want to emphasize, especially because we are going on Hajj, and this is true, it's true in general, when you go to the KSA, but specifically because we are going on Hajj, a lot of the timings are going to be exactly that. They're going to be approximate timings, right? So for example, when we do these webinars, we often tell you we're going to do a certain movement at a certain portion of time, but we don't give you an exact timing. And that's just because we're unable to do that so far out. So for example, we always say that the movement from Mina to Arafat on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah on Arafat day is going to be in the morning, but we don't give you an exact time. Is it going to be 7 a.m.? Is it going to be 7:15? Is it going to be 7:30? Exact 10:30? Because because Hajj is just a very big project with so many people, right? It's not just us, it's not just the Hajjaj from North America or from America, but it's like 2 million people there. And so the timings, will change according to situations changing. So we have to keep that in mind that it's always a developing situation. And so the timings will reflect that as well. But one thing that I think is like the when you first go to Saudi Arabia, you learn very quickly that timing is measured by the salahs, and often people will say like before the salah or after the salah, instead of giving you an exact hour, an exact minute timing. And then again, did cover some of this yesterday, but I'd love to emphasize the point for those of us who weren't here yesterday is that disability services and accessibility for those with disabilities will look very different in the kingdom than it does look like over here. So to preface this, I think and those with disabilities obviously have a better understanding of this, is that in the United States, right, and in this part of the world, there's a big push to ensure that people with disabilities have the accessibility requirements that they need. So that can be things like wheelchair ramps, elevators, braille, where signposts are, so that they can read it. Accessibility for those who are hard of hearing or face deafness, things like that. So we're coming from a place where we're used to a lot of these things, and now we're going to a place, when we go to Saudi Arabia, these sort of accessibilities are going to be extremely limited, right? So you don't be surprised if you're, have someone who's in a wheelchair in your family and your journey looks different from those who are not traveling with someone in a wheelchair, because this and I want everyone to be like mentally prepared for this. It's just things look different. They might not have a special um like a special area just for wheelchairs. Like you might have to go around to get to the ramp, things like that. Like the ramp might not be right next to where the stairs are, you might have to go around to get to it, or they might have you walk a different path, things like that. And yeah, so I wanted to make the point that it is difficult to navigate. Of course, we're here to help you with that, inshallah. That's what yesterday's webinar was all about. And inshallah, we'll continue to be helping you with that. But I want everyone to be mentally prepared that if these are services that you're looking for and are planning on using, that they will look different from what we're used to over here. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Moving on, inshallah, I wanted to talk a little bit about communication. I think this is something which has really, really been on most of our minds, because some of us are traveling with our families and we need to make sure we're communicating with them and staying in touch with them while we're in Saudi Arabia, whereas some of us are actually traveling without our families or without all of our families. And while we're in Saudi Arabia, we need to touch base with them back here at home to ensure everything's okay, to let them know we're okay, to let them know that things are going well, etc. And then also it's a really important for lines of communication to stay open because we need to ensure that us as a team or us as a, being the service providers are able to answer your questions and to let you know what's happening. And as I mentioned, Hajj is a developing situation. So there's a lot of developing situations. So keeping you up to date with those real-time updates. So essentially all of that to say is that communication is key, and nowhere more so than during Hajj. And it's really important to be able to be plugged in because there's so many things that can happen. I mean, I my idea is never to try to scare anyone, and I don't mean to scare anyone, but it's very common this happens, especially for those who it's their first time, is that people, they go to the haram, for example, in Mecca, and they easily can get lost. I mean, even on the screen, you can see just how big the complex for the haram is. It's really big, and there's construction happening as well. So like there's a lot of moving parts, and things look different. Things look very similar, but you'll think that I'm on the same gate from which I entered because the arches and things look similar, but you're actually on the complete opposite side. And so all that to say, it's really easy to get lost, right? And so if you do get lost, it's not because of you, it's genuinely like people very often get lost in the haram, because it's just so massive and sprawling, and things look the same. And then you add into it the fact that there's so many people packed in there, and then they've blocked off certain routes where you can't enter from this gate, or you can't exit from that gate, and you sometimes will end up leaving from the exact opposite side of where you came in, and so you're all the way on the other side of the haram from where your hotel is, and now you need to figure out how to get back, or you've been disconnected from your group or disconnected from your family, right? And you need to be able to get into communication with them. So all of that to say, communication is extremely important. Communication is really key here, into ensuring that everyone has a safe and healthy trip. And communication, it will look different in the KSA than what we have over here. And so the main thing that I want to emphasize here is where phones come in. I think phones are a really great way to make sure that we're able to keep in touch, especially if you have your own phone that's working. You're able to, continue to use the WhatsApp groups, continue to get those lifetime updates, continue to converse in the open WhatsApp groups. You'll continue to have access to things like calling. And so if you get lost, that's an easy call to make, or using the navigation app on your phone. So all of that to say is that it's really, I would say, a good idea to make sure that you stay connected, especially if these are things that sound, services that you feel that they sound important to you. So what I mean by that is if you are somebody who, uses a navigation app when you're walking and feel that you might need it over there, it might be a good idea to have it. Or as I mentioned before, like the translation apps, those oftentimes they do need the internet to be connected for them to work, right? And so making sure that you're connected to the internet while you're there and on your trip, it can really take two different forms. So I want to go into how exactly you can go about making sure you're connected. Your phone line is connected throughout your trip. So the first thing is roaming data. And so what that means is that what you go ahead and do is that you speak to your carrier here in the United States, whether it's, T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon or whatever carrier you have, and you let them know I'm going abroad, I'm going to Saudi Arabia, and I want to have continued coverage while I'm there. What does that look like? Oftentimes they might either have something which is included in your plan or perhaps is an extra cost, but they'll give you like a certain package for Saudi Arabia, and let you know, okay, this is the price and this is what you get. This is the internet, this is the texting, and this is the calling that you get while you're there. And so that way you have these services. Of course, I can't speak exactly to what the services available from your service provider is going to be. So, or your phone carrier is going to be. So my recommendation here is before the trip, I think now is a great time to do it because we're coming up on that close to the 2-week mark. So you'd want to just go ahead and pick up the phone, give them a call, and let them know, yeah, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. What are my options? Look at those options. If they work for you, it's a great idea to go ahead and just keep that going. And the other thing that you could actually speak to your service provider, your carrier about, especially if you've bought the phone that you currently have through them, is to find out if you have a unlocked phone, or if it's not, if it hasn't been unlocked, to find out if they're able to unlock that for you. Oftentimes they're able to do that remotely. And the reason why I bring up having an unlocked phone and all that means when they say an unlocked phone is that your phone has the capacity to take or to be used in other countries with those local SIMs. So for example, for Saudi Arabia, that you'd be able to take the phone that you have and input a local Saudi SIM, and it would still work on that phone. So not all phones are able to input those local SIMs. In order to ensure that your phone can do that, you'd want to make sure that it's unlocked. So you do that either by reaching out to the person you bought it or the place where you bought it from, or if you bought it from your carrier like Verizon, T-Mobile, whatever, you can go ahead and give them a call and ask them. And oftentimes it's been my experience that if the phone isn't unlocked, they're able to just do it remotely while I'm on the phone with them. There's some codes that come up and they just walk you through it and are able to open it up for you. Another good option that people do is actually they like to carry a secondary phone with them, so that they can keep their the day-to-day use phone as is, like with the SIM that it has, perhaps with the data roaming, or even just to use it on Wi-Fi. And I'll speak a little bit more about Wi-Fi in just in a bit, but they keep that phone on the side, and then they have a special separate phone just for the local SIM. And so in that case, I would recommend, again, making sure that that phone is unlocked and can take a local Saudi SIM. It's as simple as just finding out if it's unlocked. And in my experience, I found that generally the local SIMs tend to work better on Android phones versus on iPhones. However, I've used them with iPhone as well and it works, but you need to just make sure that if you're whichever phone you're using, it has a capacity to actually take the SIM. So some of our phones are an eSIM phone, so they don't even have the port to put the SIM in. So make sure it has like a physical port to put the SIM in as well. So that way you could do that. So just main takeaways is that you can keep your current service that you have here, just extend it into data roaming, or you could get a local SIM. But if you're planning on doing that, you should make sure that you are keeping a phone that can actually take a local SIM. There are, phone shops over there once you get there, but it's just an extra, hurdle for you to have to go to a phone shop, get a phone. They're relatively cheaper because these aren't like name brand phones. So you could do that as well if you needed to. But my suggestion is always just to be prepared and have it from here. So that way, if you needed to get a SIM right away as soon as you land, it's very easy to do at the airport. They have lots of kiosks for the different SIM carriers. People often ask me what's the best SIM carrier to use. They have different companies, just like we would have different carriers here. They have different carriers there, STC, Mobily, Zain. In my experience, they're generally the same. In the main cities, they all work pretty well. And then when you get out of Mecca or Medina and you're in that road trip in between, the service tends to dwindle a little bit. But when you're in the main city areas, they all have pretty good coverage, and actually the internet is quite fast. So if you're somebody who needs to be plugged in, I would actually recommend having keeping a local SIM to use for as a hotspot, because I have spoken to some of you who need to be working throughout or need to be working some of the days while you're there. In that case, I would actually recommend going ahead and using that phone as a hotspot. I've done it before and it works really well. I take Zoom calls using those hotspots. I work online, answer emails. It works pretty well. And then that I think brings up the question of like, what about the Wi-Fi, right? So there's two times or like two main times where you might be looking for Wi-Fi. It's like one in the hotels. And so you will have access to Wi-Fi in all of the hotels that you're in, inshallah. But do keep in mind that this is hotel Wi-Fi. So it just tends to be slower than the Wi-Fi we're used to at home or at work in our office because there's so many people on that one connection. So if you're just trying to do casual browsing, I think the Wi-Fi in the hotel is fine. If you're just trying to communicate with your loved ones back home, you want to make a video call or things like that, it's fine. But if you're trying to work, as I mentioned, I know some of our brothers and sisters here do have to stay working through some of the days. So if you have to work, in that case, the hotel Wi-Fi is probably not going to be the best service for you. So you can use it for casual scrolling, but for the actual work, and if you're trying to have a higher connection speed, you're going to want to go ahead and buy like a local package for that. And then the other times when you might have Wi-Fi is that the public Wi-Fis, and there is public Wi-Fi there in different shops, they'll have them, or in different areas, they'll have them. You will not have public Wi-Fi in Mina, nor will you have it in the areas in which we're going for Hajj. But what I mean is the areas around the Haram often has free public Wi-Fi, but it is extremely weak. It is extremely weak. So even if you connect to it, it's very slow. So it's hard to even get like little things to load. Perhaps you might be able to get like WhatsApp messages out, but other to that, you're not going to be able to load web pages or load your social media or things like that. So again, if you're somebody who needs to be plugged in all the time and you need to be in the know, you're going to want to make sure you have your own service. But if you're, again, just casually scrolling, browsing, you don't need to be plugged in, you don't need to be on social media or anything like that, then and only then would I say you'd want to suffice on the hotel Wi-Fi. And so just to bring up a point specific to Saudi Arabia with communications is that many of us, I think, are used to using the app WhatsApp. And so one thing to note is that you can do WhatsApp text messages and send pictures and send voice notes as you would normally, but you will not be able to actually make calls in WhatsApp. So in Saudi Arabia, WhatsApp calling does not work. So you can't make calls, and neither can you make video calls in Saudi Arabia on WhatsApp, right? So there is a way that people found around this, which is called VPN, and they just use a VPN. So that's one way to get around the WhatsApp calling block. But if you would actually just like to use a different app, there are other apps that you can use. So most of the big social media apps that offer calling or video calling, they all work. If you are using an iPhone or you know have a FaceTime link, those work as well. So FaceTime audio and FaceTime video work very well. Apps like Telegram, Bitmo, um, and all the big social media apps, so like whether you're using Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, and Instagram, all of the calling features on those work just fine. So it's really just the WhatsApp that's that the video and voice calling does not work on. Again, the ways around it are just to use a VPN, use a different app, or oftentimes what we'll do is just leave voice notes back and forth, and that is suffice for us as well. And yeah, so overall, you're going to ensure that you have some form of communication, and inshallah, between all of the apps that I mentioned, you're able to make those calls as well. And one thing to note as well is that the WhatsApp calling, if you actually use your data roaming from a carrier here in the States and are using your local US number, the WhatsApp calling still works. But the issue comes in when you're using a local Saudi number, or you're using the Wi-Fi or the local services like the local internet, then it's not going to work. So in that case, like I mentioned, there's many different apps that you can use and many different ways around actually the inability to do WhatsApp calling. So with that, I want to talk a little bit more about the services that are available in the kingdom, and things that I think many of us have questions about and have a little bit of anxiety around. I think we're very used to the services that we have here in the States, and we are going for a relatively decent amount of time. Some of us are there for 2 weeks, some of us are even there for longer. So we want to make sure that we have certain services that are that we're used to or we might need while we're there. And so I want to kind of go into some of those things. So first of all, with shopping, I want to say that, people have anxiety of like, what shall I take with me? Will I be able to get XYZ thing there? Most of the things that you're going to need for your trip, if, may Allah forbid, if for some reason you didn't pack it from home, if for some reason you forgot it, if for some reason, something happened where you didn't have it with you, it's very easy to find in the market. So things like clothing, things like toiletries, right? Like shampoo, conditioner, toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, for females, the sanitary pads, everything and anything, you can often just find it in the shops there. And sometimes it's even a little bit cheaper to buy it there than it is to buy it here. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that if for some reason you're not able to bring it from here, you can often times actually get it over there as well. And so I just want to put everyone at ease a little bit that if you need to, you will have the opportunity to actually get it over there if you needed to. And so with that, I think one of the most important services while we're there is the pharmacy. Oftentimes in travel, we get sick, and then compound that with Hajj, which is physically exhausting and demanding. Many people often end up sick, with either fatigue or dehydration, the common cold, flu symptoms. Again, remembering the fact that there's like over 202 million people together. There's lots of different things going around. So it's very common to get sick during Hajj. And so if you needed to go to the pharmacy and grab something, they're very abundant, very easy to find. There's usually a pharmacy on every block around the Haram. They have pharmacies underneath the hotels, and it's usually not just one, it's multiple. And yeah, if you needed even like a prescription, oftentimes if you have the original script from your doctor or a picture of the original script from the doctor, you can show that to the pharmacist, and they can actually, if they have those medicines available, they can fill those scripts, and they have most of the big medicines that people usually need. They actually have them, and they're able to fill these prescriptions if for some reason the medicine that you brought with you runs out, or there's any other sort of issues with them. You can always go to the pharmacy and grab them. And again, the over-the-counter stuff, whether it's for diarrhea or dehydration or headaches, body pains, if you need muscle creams, things like that, they're plenty. They're total, it's very easy to actually get that from the pharmacy if you needed it. Another service that people often are very weary about is laundry. You are going for a long stretch of time. So there are laundry services available in the hotels, and there are also shops that you can find for laundry services, but they tend to be on the expense, like a little bit on the expensive side. So my recommendation is usually for people to take as many clothes as you'll need for the trip. But if you wanted to do the laundry, there is a service for that. It's just going to be a little bit pricey around the Haram because of the fact, or in the malls, because of the fact that you're in such a prime location. So they just tend to be a little bit pricier than you'd expect. But if that's a service you want, it's available to you. Currency exchange. I think this is probably one of the most important, right? As we are gearing up to go. So one thing I will mention is that credit cards are pretty widely accepted in Saudi Arabia. So the cards that you're going to want to lean towards are Visa and MasterCards. Because American Express doesn't work as well, Discover does not work as well, but Visa specifically, and then secondarily MasterCard is widely accepted in Saudi Arabia. They have a local card called Mada, which is also very widely accepted. But since we're coming from the States, we don't have Mada cards. We have either Visa or MasterCards, which are going to be accepted. So if you wanted to use credit cards, those would be the best ones to keep. But even then, of course, you'd want to have some sort of some form of cash, so that way if there's a place where for some reason they're not able to take your credit card, you have the cash option as well. And so with the cash, the exchange rate it fluctuates, but it's usually around 3.75. So for each one US dollar, it's about 3.75 riyals. So the local currency in Saudi Arabia is called riyals. So it'll be 3.75 riyals. So at currency exchanges, you might find that they're giving 3.74, 3.73, 3.72, 3.71, 3.7. So if, like I said, different exchange rates, different exchange shops will give different exchange rates. I've seen it as low as 3.6, but I would say as close to the 3.75 number as you can get is probably best. Currency exchanges are very easy to find in the areas where we're going to be. So for example, at the airport, when you land, there are currency exchanges there, as well as around the Haram, very easy to find. If you're going to Medina first, in fact, there's, currency exchange not far at all from our hotel. And there's an abundant amount around the Haram. If you're going to Makkah first, and you're going to be obviously around the Haram, same thing. They have them under the hotels, and you can go and get your currency exchange, as well as if those who are staying in Azizia, they have currency exchanges is there as well. So if you didn't have a chance to exchange your currency at the airport, you always have a chance once you get to the hotel to do that. Or for example, if you exchanged a certain amount and you needed to exchange more during the middle of the trip, you would be able to do that pretty easily as well. And just keeping in mind, you try to get the closest to that 3.75 rate as you can. So that way, you're making the most of your dollars to reals. And so yes, restaurants I think is like a big thing on everyone's mind. So we do have our half board covered, and what that means is we have breakfast and dinner every single day in our hotels. But so those days we're going to want to go out and explore a little bit for lunch. And so I kind of want to take this opportunity to do a little plug, but there's lots and lots and lots of great restaurants both in Mecca and in Medina, and there's just such a large variety of different foods. So if you're looking for different cuisines, or perhaps the cuisine of the country that you're from originally, right? They have Pakistani food, they have Indonesian food, they have Turkish food, they have Afghan food. So they have lots of different cuisines and variety available. And overall, the prices, so if you're staying close to the haram and you're trying to eat in the hotels, or sorry, in the restaurants that are under the hotel, those tend to be the prices are going to be inflated. They're going to be higher because again of the prime location where you're sitting. But as you get further from the haram, the prices actually get much better. And of course, we're keeping in mind that exchange rate where we do from reals to dollars, and it feels very fair. Oftentimes, you're able to get a really good meal for less than you would be paying for it over here. And so I do want to emphasize that inshallah, there's a lot of I know things that people worry about and stress about when you're going on Hajj, but food should absolutely not be one of them. Inshallah, we're going to make sure you have amazing catering, both while you're in the hotel and you have that half board of the breakfast and the dinner, and also during the days of Hajj, all of the food is going to be there, inshallah, and you'll be having an abundant amount. But if for some reason you wanted to eat something different, there's always an opportunity, or you wanted to go out and explore, there's always an opportunity to do that. And in Mecca and Medina, the restaurants are a dime a dozen. There are many, 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 many different types of restaurants just within the hotels that are next to the haram. And then if you're staying in Azizia, you have lots of different varieties over there as well, and lots of different kind of like mom and pop shops, or local, I should say, local owned businesses. And like I said, the food is really good, and often cheaper than what we'd be paying here. So it's always nice to have that as well. And yeah, just like a general note about shopping, it's going to be the same as I mentioned. So when you're shopping closer to the haram, which most of us will be doing, you'll notice that the items they tend to have a normal market price. Something might be 5 reals more or 5 reals less, moving from one shop to another. But overall, people ask me, okay, did I get a good deal? And for the most part, there's like a going market rate. So for example, for the sisters, when you go abaya shopping, certain abayas that are in style will be at a certain rate, no matter which different abaya shop you go to. Granted, a couple of reals here, a couple of reals there. Same thing with the ihram. For the brothers, if you wanted to go and buy your secondary ihram, you're going to find overall the same kind of market rates throughout around the haram. The stores tend to be pretty unified in their pricing. But as you get closer to the haram, I think the prices are just a little bit more inflated. And as you get further out, they get a little bit cheaper. But for ease and convenience, most of us just do our shopping closer to the haram. And again, when you factor in that exchange rate, it ends up being cheaper than we would pay from here anyways. And so we're often very happy with those purchases. And so when you go shopping there, you have an opportunity to go to they have lots of different gift shops and 5 real shops, which are, very similar to our dollar stores where they have lots of different trinkets and things like that that you could bring home as gifts, as well as if you wanted to go shopping for gifts or for your abayas or for the brothers, any thobes, things like that. They have lots of different stores around the haram. You do not need to go far. You don't need to, have to go specifically to any malls. It's all over there. As well as, they have coffee shops, restaurants, these type of shopping. So Alhamdulillah, whatever sort of things you might feel you need as far as services go, for the most part, you're going to find them around the haram. The main difference in services, like I said, it comes for like people with disabilities, things like that. It'll look different. But inshallah, as far as shopping goes, you have everything under the sun. You have local brands, you have international brands, you have foreign brands, and you have lots of different uh types of shops. You have date shops, gold shops, gift shops, abaya shops, thobe shops. So if you are planning on going shopping there, you'll have lots of opportunities to do that. One thing I do also want everyone to keep in mind while you're there is that just like with any other location, there are certain precautions that you want to take and certain things that you want to keep in mind. So, for example, when you're a traveler to any destination, you want to be very mindful of common tourist traps, right? And so Saudi Arabia is no different in that you want to be very mindful of the fact that if somebody is selling something on the streets and not in a shop, just be wary of that, the quality and things like that, as well as if somebody specifically, a tourist trap over there is that if somebody comes to you with a kind of like a story or a background story of um, um, why they're asking you for money, and oftentimes a very common one that I've heard is that I came from XYZ country, and they might know which country you're from, so they'll ask you, are you from this country, because they heard you speaking a language, etc. And they said, well, I came from the same country and I lost my passport, and now I don't, I lost my passport, I lost my bag, I don't have anything. It's a very common tourist trap over there, so just be very, very wary and mindful about who you're handing money to, because you don't want to get duped, or you don't want to have to be fall prey to those types of tourist traps and scams and things like that. So just be very wary of like who you're handing money to, and in the same way, just like you would in any other country, for your safety, make sure you're not getting into unmarked cars. If you are planning on taking a taxi anywhere, of course transportation is provided, but if you wanted to go somewhere else and you wanted to grab a cab, either go with a official marked taxi cab. So the cabs over there are a tealish greenish color, and they say like Al-Ujra on them, which means like they're taxi cabs, and you can hail them on the street, or otherwise use like a rideshare app like Uber or Careem or Ego, the latter two, which are local to Saudi Arabia. Uber, of course, all of us are familiar with. To use a rideshare app, so to make sure that you're getting into an official marked taxi or rideshare versus an unmarked car. And that's just for safety, but B, also just again, to avoid getting falling prey to any like those tourist traps and things like that. So with that, inshallah, I want to thank everyone for coming. I hope that this session was able to answer a lot of the questions that you have regarding what it's going to be like navigating the KSA, and I hope that it also helped put you at ease a little bit of the fact that inshallah, a lot of the things that you're going to be looking for will be there for you and will be close enough to your hotels that you're easily able to get to them, inshallah. And of course, we're here to help you with anything else, so we're here to support you. Always feel free to reach out. So I have the help desk number there on screen. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're more than happy to help you and to hear from you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Prepare for the transformative journey of a lifetime. Visit our website and follow us for more information.